It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series, which heads to Parks this weekend. We'll tell you about that coming up. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick at Del Mar. Ray, I thought we'd talk a little Breeders' Cup today. We're starting to ramp up toward the Breeders' Cup. There are 4 challenge races at Saratoga this weekend. There's the Travers, which is always kind of a setup race heading toward the Breeders' Cup Classic. So in the last few days, we've had a couple of developments. One is the announcement of the future sites for the Breeders' Cup in the next 3 years. It was a little late, compared to previous years when you found out usually pretty far in advance. But it was Santa Anita, then Keeneland, then Del Mar. What's your takeaway about that announcement?
I guess my takeaway is that this is affirmation that first-time host Del Mar in 2017 and Keeneland in 2015 did an outstanding job. And it looks like the Breeders' Cup, until further notice at least, has settled on a 4-track, 2-state rotation, starting with Churchill Downs this year, and then back to California, back to Kentucky at Keeneland, and then back to California again. So until something happens at Belmont Park, which I don't think the New York Racing Association has actually sought a Breeders' Cup for some time, until they start and finish capital improvements. And until the capital improvement project at Laurel is completed, it looks like those are the 4 tracks that are capable and willing to do the Breeders' Cup.
And all of them have done a good job in recent years. As you mentioned, Del Mar and Keeneland, but of course Santa Anita has hosted the thing 9 times. And it's always good there. The weather's always good in Southern California that time of year. But I do hope that Belmont Park gets a Breeders' Cup once again. We all remember the 2001 poignant Breeders' Cup at Belmont Park. It is New York City after all, and you want your major sports events to be in those big cities from time to time at least. And I think Laurel Park's going to be a great destination as well. And I know that Belmont is planning to do these capital improvements as part of getting the hockey arena there and creating a different atmosphere around Belmont Park. So that'll be exciting in the future, but I think, as you said, for now we're settled on that Kentucky-California rotation. Another development that came out this week is that the Breeders' Cup, for the first time in about 15 years, is going to offer a future wager on several divisions starting this weekend. What do you think about this? Good idea? Will it work?
Well, good idea. You're branding the Breeders' Cup a little farther out. It's like the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series races, the win and your ends. You got people thinking about the Breeders' Cup, getting excited about the year-end championship races, and now you can bet on them. So what's not to like about it? 15 years ago, they handled $500,000 about, and 15 years ago, you didn't have a lot of the technology you have today.
Yeah, it was almost like in the dial-up age back then. You certainly didn't have smartphones. You didn't have nearly as many ADWs as you have now, so there are a lot more options. People can bet anywhere nowadays. So I think it will have quite a bit more handle this time around. And the Kentucky Derby future wager is really popular. I think one negative here is that it's kind of late to be doing this, to be starting it. First of all, the last-minute announcement that it's happening this weekend, 2 days ago. But then the fact that it didn't start maybe in the spring, when you really could get some odds on horses that will end up being favorites. And that's really the appeal of a future wager, is to identify a horse early on when they're 50 to 1 and they end up being the favorite in the race. So I think maybe next time back it up some, because I would have loved to see what you could gotten on Accelerate, for example, a few months ago, as opposed to the 4 to 1 he is now. Although looking down the list, there are horses on there 30 to 1 that are pretty tasty odds.
Yeah, the difference between this and the Derby bet is that with the Derby, you see horses really develop in the winter and springtime, whereas you get to summer and fall, these horses have already pretty much established their form. So I don't think you're going to see huge odds fluctuations. And
just to flesh it out a little bit more, there are 3 rounds of the future wager, and you're going to have an opportunity to bet on the juvenile early. That's about a week out from that. and the sire of the juvenile winner, which is kind of fun. Plus, the turf and the classic will be the third round of the betting on the future wager. So, are you going to participate in this? What do you think about it? Will it be successful? Let us know in the comments section, and take the poll we have about this on our website, PaulickReport.com. Ray, let's move on and talk about something that happened recently at Saratoga, which is there was a situation where the starting gate was put in the wrong position on the turf course for a juvenile race, and they ended up running 1 1/8 miles instead of the 1 1/16 miles for which the race was carded. My first question is, you know, you've got stewards watching, the jockeys are on the horses, they've been in many races before, they're trainers, owners watching. How in the world could this have happened?
I don't know. This happened at Belterra Park maybe a couple of months ago. Belterra Park is not Saratoga. They don't have, you know, they have stewards, the same thing. But at Saratoga, you've got, you know, so many people watching in the press box. The stewards should be aware of it. What I'm kind of curious about is who's to be held accountable with this. If a jockey misjudges the finish line, boom, he's going to be fined or suspended if it's bad enough. If someone misjudges where to put the starting gate, is there no action taken? As far as I know, no one has been sanctioned for this mistake. And to me, the stewards are part of the problem with this. They're supposed to be watching this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking out on the course. You've seen 1 1/8 miles races before on the turf, I'm sure, and 1 1/16 miles. You got to be paying attention to where the starting gate is, and you're like, wait a minute, there's a problem here. Call down to the starters and get it fixed. Mistakes happen. I'm not going to pile on and say that they don't. But as you said, there's got to be consequences when mistakes are made. You know, it doesn't mean somebody needs to lose their job, but they might need to be suspended for a couple of days just to send a message to say, look, this is serious business. Because, and this is why it's serious business, because, and I do not understand this, why in the world was that race recorded as official with all the wagers and payouts as normal? It should have been purse money only, or just a no contest is a better, you know, thought on that, because the trainers, you know, they lose out because they didn't want their horses running 1 1/8 miles. Probably they wanted them to run 1 1/16 miles, and they're 2-year-olds. The bettors, though, are the ones that got really screwed on this, because you're betting a different race, and then at the end they say, oh, it's all the same. I mean, that really irks me.
Yeah, we've talked about competence before with other issues, and this is just strictly a matter of competence and also integrity. The fans, what are they supposed to think after seeing this kind of mistake made and nobody held accountable at all?
And the fact that it was declared an official race, that is just mind-boggling to me. And you know, it's just one more piece for horse players to go, this game is crooked, man. I mean, it really is hard to not see this and to see jockeys stiffing mounts and want to put your money in the windows. I'm telling you, it's a real problem.
Yeah, the horse player has to come first. You know, the consideration of the horse player has to come first. And in this case, you know, to me, it's the New York State Gaming Commission that is at fault for not issuing even a single statement, I don't think.
Yeah. All right. One more thing we want to get to before we wrap up is I just thought it was interesting that this resort company in Las Vegas is proposing a racetrack in New Mexico. And the idea of the CEO is to create a moving grandstand that would be on the rail and follow the horses around the track, as opposed to, you know, sitting in one spot and only see them at the start and the finish or whatever. What do you think about this?
Well, it doesn't have to be that big, probably, considering that the average size crowd for a race out in, I'm not sure where this license is going to be issued, but it's for the last racetrack license. So it doesn't have to be that big. I kind of like it, actually. I would love to sit in a moving grandstand and ride along as the horses go around the track. As I understand it, the guy who came up with the idea is involved in crew, which is the rowing, and they have movable grandstands for that.
Yeah, it was back in the day when he was rowing. On the bank of the river, they would have like a train car that would move along as the rowers are on the water, so they can follow along. It's a great idea, and I can see problems like people drinking too much and getting sick, or motion sickness. Bring the Dramamine, as we said in the headline. But you gotta think, innovate, crazy ideas, throw them out there. I mean, we're so resistant in this business to change. Here's an example of maybe, why not? Why not? Let's see what happens.
Well, we see in Europe and we see in Dubai the moving camera that goes along with the field. That's one thing I don't think any track in the United States has done yet. The camera the only camera that we have that moves, I think, is in the Triple Crown races, maybe the Breeders' Cup, when they have a camera on a string. But I like the idea.
All right, so the match series moves to parks. We're getting toward the end of this event, and it's close in the standings. And this weekend, it's going to parks.
Yeah, Paige McKenna, an 8-year-old who's participated in, I'm not sure how many of the races, is in the Sal de Bunda race, named for the racing commissioner and Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association executive. So, it's an interesting race, in part because Paige McKenna, I think, is 1 point back of the lead for the overall point standings, for bonus for the $50,000 bonus for the owner, and there's a bonus for the trainer as well. So the race at Parks is going to be one I'll watch this weekend for sure.
Yeah, and I think Paige McKinney is awesome. An 8-year-old, and I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to take the championship here before all is said and done. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.